All right. Hello, everybody. All right. Good to see people showing up. That's great. So we have check-in review session here in our Chem 210 nutrition class, and of course, this is to take questions, comments, concerns. I hope I address most, but certainly uh, I want to hear. That's part of this also to get a feel for what everybody's thinking, feeling, going through the material in the course. This is summer session course. A lot of competing stuff goes on in the summer, and this is a condensed semester, 10 weeks. Uh, and we are moving through the semester. And it's always good to kind of not forget that we're in a college course, a distance learning course, um, uh, which we do have to keep that in mind. Somehow remember, we have a whole bunch of things. Maybe doing multiple courses. Maybe you have other things, of course, going on, and it happens sometimes. Distance learning classes. Days go by, which turn into weeks, and then suddenly you're behind and then struggling, feel stressed. So please try to fight against that. Um, we are uh, uh, we are in our third week already, coming to the end of the third week, and that's you're following along and seeing announcements and reading our little modules there. That means we already have an exam coming up. Um, and show that again. So syllabus, it's really good to, um, I don't know what everybody's habits are as far as electronic versus in print, but it's up to you to figure out how you get through things, how you learn things, how you manage your time, and um, I'm here to make suggestions, hear questions, how you do this, whatnot. I try to provide uh, as much as possible to help you get through it. You do want to make this important to you. If it's not, to somehow put this I need this course to move on. I'm very interested. I want to learn more about nutrition to manage my lifestyle, my health. There's a lot of reasons that you can list, you can think of. Uh, but my advice is to think of those, and act on them, and keep up with things. So we do have, and it's nice to see some of us that can have our cameras on. It's not essential, but it's nice to see people in our. This is optional, and just the content and me speaking is in a recording that'll be uh, put up for anyone to look at again, or that couldn't make it. I know. So what is this? A Thursday night? I try to I'll try to move these around, these optional WebExes that students that you want to come to. I know that you have other things. You have other classes. You might have a lab class that goes lots of times is conflicts. I try to move it around. I looked at the survey, the pre-class questionnaire. I try to guide when we have these, and also uh, a few days, or this case, sorry, a day before test opens, right? The distance test, the test is not given on a single day, as you can see there, and in the syllabus. Um, So just someone, I know I showed the screen, but could someone just acknowledge that you see the PowerPoint that I'm going to refer to? Someone,
Yeah, I see it.
all right, thank you. Uh, so it's just a reminder of things. Yes, lockdown browser, most people um, did that uh, practice quiz. And as I've been saying, don't worry about your score. I gave everybody full credit just for logging in and using lockdown browser if you haven't in the past to make sure that you have that. And if not, to straighten that out, look at the directions again, contact me or others to make sure that you understand that. I'll go through that a little bit more in a couple of visuals here. What else? So the modules and MindTap. In the modules, there's brief recordings that I've done for each of the chapters. The MindTap exercises, they are important. They a lot of them are very interesting, reinforce or apply the content that you're reading and studying and learning. Some of it is the makeup of some of the questions, the short essay questions. Don't let the word essay frighten us. It's not an essay in terms of multiple pages. Essay, and I'll mention this again, it means make sure you answered the question in at least a few sentences. When it says describe, sometimes it would say list and describe, list and explain. So don't just do the list. Explain means to write a sentence or two. Right? It's not a full-blown essay. It's a word short. Short is there. So I expect for most of them, 3 to 5 or 6 sentences if they're thought out and have content, depending on your writing style. I really like, I haven't gotten through everybody's, all the discussions yet, but I see that there's good writing. It's good practice to write content that you're trying to learn. You know that. It reinforces, it makes your mind think through the content, make connections so that you're able to answer collateral type questions, or questions very similar, just applying the reasoning. And I try to develop and use questions that align with things that you've maybe done in MindTap or in the discussion posts or and see others' posts, kind of a collective learning there. Um, uh, there's other folders, additional resources. I noticed that I'll show what I mean here. One of the resources that I'm going to refer to now about reading a textbook was the file was corrupted. I just reloaded it. That's a kind of a nice thing to look at. Okay, remember that there's 4 exams. Someone reminded me that though I did send out to everyone in an email the correct syllabus, someone said, I think maybe Stacy or someone wrote to me saying you have the wrong syllabus posted in Blackboard. Thank you for reminding me that I did switch it, and there are 4 exams. And I try to make that clear in multiple places when exams are coming up, uh, and in announcements and in the modules. 4 exams, they are 65% of the grade. Um, the MindTap assignment about a quarter, and the Blackboard is 10%. But that's a good kind of practice that you do want to practice your writing and thinking through the questions that I post. It's not every single week as a discussion question there, but majority of weeks there will be one there aligned with the current topic. So the first exam, it had this introductory first two chapters kind of overview. Then you had a bit more detailed chapter, that chapter 3 about digestion, absorption, and transport. I know there's a lot of content there. Uh, the questions that I just posted in an announcement, and I'll show them again here, that's the type of this mini essay or open-ended question that will be on the test, those kind of things, and maybe actually a few of them. But it's those are things that you're reading content like in chapter 3, you may be familiar with some of the content, or if you took another biochemistry course, similar, or an advanced biology course, or another nutrition course, then a lot of the vocabulary you're familiar with. But yes, there is a lot of um, uh, first level fundamental kind of knowledge that really lasts go through other chapters in our exploration here in the course, because you see already that those first three chapters are a kind of overview. Third, a bit more in depth, and when I'm thinking I'm in depth, I'm thinking about some of the digestive enzymes, not just enzymes, but hormones. So there's a bunch of them that take a little time to, excuse the pun, but to digest and to really understand what organ they're coming from, what they work on, why, what's their kind of cycle, what triggers some of these. I'm talking about the gastrin and secretin and cholecystokinin, to mention almost all of them that you need to know, the basic ones. And then we start looking at the macromolecules. First one, carbohydrates, okay, and the few types of carbohydrates. Then lipids. So there's another bunch of detail there, a little more in depth about each of those, the digestion, the absorption, the transport, the difference among these macromolecules. That's certainly a essay type question that you'll see. Some of the differences just in your mind, think about, or as you're taking notes or thinking about this before taking the exam. Carbohydrates, where they're absorbed, what's their digestion, what happens to them, how do we absorb them, is it easy, hard? What happens after they're digested? Where do they go? Where are they transported? Right? So think of these things and think about how you learn these things. For me, I could never learn things like this without kind of drawing, taking notes, annotating my own notes, thinking about them, just kind of, practice your design and things in your notes. That's why, I mean, I teach, told you, I teach at a STEM high school, which I try to convince students in lab and in class to use paper. Don't rely everything electronic, and sometimes it's a hard sell for younger kids. But there's lots of proven correlations between much better ability to absorb and use new information and connect it with other information by writing and connecting and thinking deeply about content. Then amino acids, then then we start a couple of more challenging chapters in the next section, the energy metabolism and energy balance. That's 7 and 8 coming up in a couple of weeks. But here I'll go through uh, some information here and some uh, practice kind of multiple choice questions. And then if there's any, let's see, I don't have the chat open. Please don't be shy about just speaking up. Sometimes I don't see where the heck I'm gonna just assume that, because lots of times WebEx changes where things are. I should be able to see please speak up. I'm not looking at the chat right now. Okay. So just you've seen this before, and you're seeing it regularly where content is, of course, MindTap, Blackboard, and these kind of things. There are so it's 28 right now. There's 28 students in the class. Sadly, there's two at last count. I think it's just two that haven't kind of given a profile out. Is not working in MindTap yet. So that's a lot of catch up there because we're through almost 5 chapters in MindTap. I hope you're not finding that too much to do. You have multiple kind of takes at a lot of things. They're not heavily weighted each thing. There's a diversity of kind of activities in MindTap. So, and that's part of this platform that seems reasonable. We've been using this platform with MindTap, I think 4 years now. Again, you may not be interested in all these apps and things, but they're updating a few things. You may have gotten a message on I don't know, improving the read aloud feature or some other feature. If you have the time to click through these, look at what might be helpful to you, flashcards, annotating text, kind of thing, the tools. The sometimes there's questions about the diet and wellness plus activity. Sometimes students think that there's some requirement to do this through the whole course, that is, record all your dietary pattern through the whole course. That's not necessary, absolutely, unless you want to use the app. It's a nice app. It gives you a readout. You could do a bunch of reports and things, but you're just required to do an average set of days, 3 to 5 kind of average days of eating pattern and activity will be helpful. Otherwise, don't have real data, then kind of missing maybe some information that could be valuable to you to know, because it asks you through the course to look at your macronutrient balance, to look at which minerals you might be deficient in. Is it magnesium? Is it calcium? Vitamins. Commonly, a lot of us seem like we don't get sufficient vitamin D. And then sometimes we think we're getting a lot of C or a lot of A and this kind of thing. It depends on the data that we put in, if it's kind of real, but it's all estimate, but it's a nice kind of tool to look at this if you haven't used any of these kind of apps before. This one's reasonably good. And again, no app can be perfect with what we all have in our eating pattern, but to kind of find something that's close. Okay, and then a bit more. I went through this once in the introduction orientation, the lockdown browser. Um, it's a matter of just following directions, hopefully the correct one and was downloaded correctly. It doesn't hurt to, if you think what didn't work right on the practice quiz, then you can remove it and download it again because and it's going to go through. Be patient with when you're taking the test. Just slowly, there's no rush. The time does not start when you're going through these directions of showing your ID, making sure the lighting is okay, doing this environment, whoop, went too fast there. Environmental check. The environmental check, most people did okay. So what is that for? It's kind of obvious that you do this kind of thing where you're showing, like right now, I'm trying to show my desk. I know it's not, so obviously I shouldn't have stuff. If you're taking a test, it's supposed to be kind of a clear desk. It's supposed to be kind of showing that there's not a party going on or a lot of people in the room that you, that you can and it's really to remind us, hey, we're taking a test. This is academic integrity. We don't have we want to have a unfair disadvantage um, uh, and have that on our conscience that we want to be good students and achieve what we deserve. Um, and I hope that even the first 4 chapters that you're getting curious about your learning, not just learning because you want to get through the course. You should, and you probably are, like you're looking up if you happen to go to a restaurant. More and more restaurants do um, fast food. Fast food restaurants have certain requirements. Not all restaurants are required to have nutritional information. Some find it advantageous to do this sort of thing. So uh, um, McDonald's started early that did pretty well in putting up calories, even though they're kind of large amounts of calories. We know that um, what's on our labels, if we look at nutrition facts on food packaging, it normalizes to 2,000 calories, big C calories, which is really scientifically it's kcals. But calories, 2,000 calories, that's kind of the average middle of the road. What our agencies have determined um, that's sufficient for most people as far as the calories we need for kind of normal life. Not like an Olympic athlete, not Michael Phelps, who was reportedly to have up to 6,000 or even more calories when he was in full preparation for the couple of Olympics that he was a huge star, Michael Phelps. So calories, nutrient density, macronutrient, protein quality, these are terms you're beginning to see and put some meaning around. Nutrient density, and can compare that to empty calories. Of course, they're kind of opposite. We want high nutrient density, a lot of nutrients, those 40 or so nutrients per kcals. It's easy to get kcals. It's easy to get things that we can burn for energy and carbohydrate and fat or lipid mostly. But not as easy to have a high nutrient content per those calories. So think about um, confections. If we have what is this, Twix bar, you look at the nutrient content. It's of course what? It's mainly sugar. It's probably the first ingredient, or other things that mainly are sucrose. And you're not going to find many vitamins or minerals or fiber or anything else of value in there. But it's a, you know, it's part of life to have uh, some fun foods, to have satisfy some cravings and fun whatever. A bit about studying. They mentioned you should be always trying to find the best way to use your time and absorb and learn. And um, I reposted this. It's a pamphlet that I found, and you might if you're on campus, they had these around. This one is on reading textbooks. One is that's around. That's also in additional resources, a module called that. One is on being there. That is making the most of your time in class. You can imagine what that talks about. But reading a textbook um, is, of course, not like reading the newspaper or not like reading um, a, a book or a novel. A textbook is not necessarily written in story terms, that it naturally makes connections and we follow along. Sometimes it's just kind of straight facts. It's dry. We need to add connections. So this suggests look through, survey the chapter first, see the connections that are there, or start to make them. What are the tools that you use to absorb the material? Is it a written textbook or is it electronic? How do you annotate? Do you take notes? How do you actually do that? It's not simple. It's not necessarily the same for everyone. So that's a thing to think about. How uh, are you getting through? How are you absorbing this material? You want to absorb the material because for many of you, will be this will be knowledge that you'll build upon or use in various ways. So you want to even personally be able to use it. So you want to make the most of that time. And in each of the modules have these are from the textbook. I kind of cut them down a bit. I didn't retype them or anything. As you can see, they're very detailed. It's you might think it's almost reading the textbook again, but much of it is posed in a different ways. That's helpful, I hope. 6 major classes of nutrients. So you can read through these and think of what we're talking about. Um, one that you might not think is one of those is water. Then of course you have the macronutrients. You have vitamins and minerals. What else? So we had a bunch of, in this first overview chapter, acronyms. And yeah, you should know these acronyms. I think the one that's um, for me sometimes a pain in the neck to remember what it is: acceptable macronutrient distribution range. So it's a mouthful, but what is that? That's suggesting that carbohydrates should be in this range, 45 to 60% of kcals. Um, Lipid or fat in our diet should be, it sometimes that moves around 15 to 25%, and then the remaining protein. These are ranges, um, and you'll see where you fall into when you do that little report in the Diet and Wellness Plus activity and look at your data that you compiled. It's interesting. It's curious. And it may be fun to, before you do the report, write down what you think that your range is. What do you think you get most of your calories, kcals? Do you think you have a high protein diet? You're getting it mostly from protein? Are you getting it from because you eat a lot of healthy, maybe a lot of healthy, what you consider healthy lipids or fats? Or do you think you have a mix of a perfect mix among the three? That's not the recommended, but maybe you think that's the case. List these are good things to kind of think through. Some of the ones that seem extremely detailed, you're not going to see, and because we're covering a lot of things here. There's 5 chapters, and I said there's going to be 40 questions on the test. I didn't come to that yet, did I? No, I did. Did I? All right, didn't come to that yet. These are good to know. So these are the 5 criteria that one thinks about, that if you were to talk to a dietitian or someone that calls himself a nutritionist, they would talk about this variety, um, and moderation and calorie control. You might think that they seem very close, moderation and calorie control, not necessarily. Balance, that's also, so some of them overlap one another. The last one, adequacy. Do we get enough of whatever, vitamin D or A, things that, or iron, lots of cases, that's a concern. Or if we're eating mainly a plant-based diet, and we're thinking that that's the best kind of thing. If we kind of go to an extreme and not think about that plant-based diet, we might not be getting an adequate amount of B12, because that people that are mostly plant, vegetarian or vegan, have to have that in mind. Where am I getting B12? Because it's not easy to find. There are sources, that would be nuts and seeds for vegetarian, because for people that have meat in their diet, that's a big source of the B12. B12, very important for absorption of other nutrients. Okay. These are, if you haven't seen these are very important, kind of good review material. This is also in other additional references. There's for each chapter a few pages of this multicolor. It used to be in the earlier edition of the textbook, and I'm putting copies of them for your review if you'd like. But it's really another really good review of the chapters, along with questions, highlights, important things that we're learning. What's the difference between organic and inorganic? That's a good question. What the nutrient found most abundant in the human body is nutrient. This is saying, oh yeah, water is a nutrient, and water is the answer there. These are good questions to think through. You may not see exactly that question on a test, but something related could be there. Inorganic nutrients are. Remember, all vitamins have carbon in them, and that's why they're organic, not because they're grown without synthetic chemicals. That's a different story. organic chemistry. Maybe you've taken it already. Maybe you need to take it sometime along. When we say organic chemistry, that means the chemistry of life, really, centered on carbon and uh, materials and compounds and substances that are made around carbon. So these are found. Um, I think I may have also put these within each of the modules, but very important to find these. And these are again from the Celgene text, and I just provide them for each of the chapters. There's a few pages of these orange and blue things. Um, let's see. Within the chapters, sometimes there's questions to think about. Okay, Stacy, you're saying, is there a review? Yeah, there should be. If I'm missing it, then then I didn't open it or something. There should be each of these review study guides for every chapter. So if I'm missing one, then I'll take a note and make sure I check again. Both the what I'm calling study guide outlines, that's the very detailed, and then these there's one of these for each chapter also. So I'll check that they're all there. Again, so I gave some examples of questions that you'd want to be able to answer. Here's one. I mentioned this kind of already. We'll name the 6 major classes of nutrients. Identify which are organic and which yield energy. All right, so this is really important that from the first few chapters, something that we want to know and be able to talk about. Organic, as I just said there, that means it's carbon based. So what's inorganic? Well, water is inorganic. It's not carbon, H2O. The other things that are inorganic are the minerals and the trace minerals, things like iron and magnesium and calcium, and which yield energy. Well, those are the 3 what we call macronutrients: carbohydrate, lipid, and protein, right? They're called macronutrients because we take them in much larger amounts, right? Gram quantities, hundreds of grams in most cases, versus something like iron, which we're talking about milligram, or in some microgram. Those are trace minerals, trace minerals. Uh, and we'll talk a lot more about those things like well, magnesium and zinc and things that we need in much lower quantities. Let's see. So the first couple chapters, I'm going to talk about the scientific method. How do we know what we think we know? How's information validated in the age of uh, um, fake things? Then it's important to know how scientific literature is published, peer review, and certain way that things are phenomena are studied. And that's in the first chapter. There's some of that. What's the best way that human studies are very difficult. It's because lots of times we can't control humans like we can with test animals. But it's there's ways of doing blinded studies, and the best kind of clinical studies, blinded studies, and with proper controls. There's that these acronyms. Important to know them. So another thing is very good to study from are the PowerPoints that I provide you a PDF of. They're of course good to go through, not just hear me rattle through them uh, in the recording, but to look back at them. This is a good point. Also, making correlations and connections among ways that we've determined that people die, and what of at least the major thing that they're dying from, and in the top 10, these we know are correlated and have certain connections with diet and health and lifestyle. But heart disease, that's a major cause of death. Chapter 2. So what about diet planning principles? Those were those 6 principles there. And if you can remember the gist of some of them, the calorie control, balance, adequacy, variation, etc. That's these right here. This is another kind of way to remember things. I know how do you remember things? Is do these kind of devices help you? Everybody probably has tricks of how they try to remember a list of things, make connections and things. Food label. Um, I hope those that said in the survey, sometimes some people haven't taken the time or didn't think it's important to look at a food label. I hope that reading through the second chapter there, you do find it of interest, and be curious about what's data are in a nutrition facts label. These are updated every 10 or so years to find gaps of where things might be improved. In this case, it's shows the calories a little more prominently. Added sugars is now there. And these nutrients, why are they there? Well, you watch the video that every every 5 years there's a report that comes out from our agencies that kind of overlap, but USDA for the most part review surveys across the country of how are Americans doing with health and lifestyle and diet, and make recommendations, and then maybe some policy or some rules around what's important. So a lot of science, a lot of investment goes into that. Hopefully, that's not going to suffer. This seems like it's suffering already with decisions our government is currently making, and what's priorities in terms of what our tax money is being paid for. Just throw this in here. Some of you might have heard of or read something or seen videos or things about Michael Pollan. Been around for quite a while. He's a journalist, but also very, very knowledgeable in many disciplines in science. It's interesting to see some of his YouTubes that he puts out here. A famous book This came from one of his early books, Omnivore's Dilemma. How do we as humans, we have so many choices of having an eating pattern. How do we choose what's healthy and interesting enough and enjoyable enough? And for him, this was how he made things simple and boiled down to his suggestions. Eat food, he means real food, not simulated, over-processed, ultra-processed food, real food. Eat food, not too much. It's the balance thing, and suggesting mostly plant-based. Okay, this chapter filled with a lot of information. Hopefully curious, learning all this kind of thing. Here's some important. This was actually taken. These things that I'm highlighting here are taken from that study guide / outline that I provide here. I just lifted a few things that were important, that I thought was important to make sure that we look at. So think through the GI tract. Uh, how do things move through the GI tract? You learned a bit about that. Where do things start to happen with the various types of food that we're putting into the GI tract? GI tract is maybe trivially, but called a tube that goes through our body that we don't really have the stuff that we're putting into that tube until it's can be absorbed and goes somewhere. Going somewhere, that's a process. It has to be in a certain um, uh, size and meet the requirements of how we absorb each of these things that they're broken down to, whether it's triglycerides or fatty acids or monosaccharides or amino acids or peptides. So that I just mentioned there. Those are the breakdown pieces that we start absorbing from our macronutrients. The difference between the circulatory system and the lymphatic system. You should know that difference. Why do we talk about them separately? Well, it's to do with lipids and other fat soluble substances are not absorbed directly into the bloodstream because they're insoluble for the most part in water. That's what our blood is, water-based. So they go into the lymphatic system, which is designed to slowly bring in the fat, fat-based or um, uh, non-water soluble or hydrophobic. Hydrophobic is a chemistry term, water hating. And it goes into the lymphatic system until it gets into a form that can then go out into the bloodstream. So that form for lipids is the chylomicrons. Those are big kind of constructions that have things that at least make them soluble that can move into the bloodstream, go mostly to the liver that process them, breaks them down, and then reestablishes them into triglycerides and stores them. And might be push them out into hold them into adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is now kind of understood as more of a responsive kind of almost like an organ for adipose tissue. It used to be just thought as blobs of lipid or fat that's just collections around, but actually there's communications um, and messengers and things that communicate with adipose tissue. This describe bacteria hormones. Well, certainly the hormones, those digestive hormones. There are a bunch of good tables in the text and in the PowerPoint that that have for chapter 3 that should kind of know those, right? And really interesting to look at nice graphics and things, knowing what we're talking about. Um, so down in the stomach here, the upper part of the GI tract, the duodenum, so much happens right here. Enzymes and things from the pancreas right next door, dumping in pancreatic with that right there, that duct there, pancreatic fluid with a whole bunch of enzymes and things that lots of stuff happens there. Gallbladder, really important for bile. Squirts of bile in there that helps solubilizes fat so that it can be metabolized. It could be broken down. Enzymes could get to parts of the fat, and the bile helps that. Bile is like a emulsifier. The bile is stored in the gallbladder, made in the liver, produced in the liver, stored in the gallbladder. Okay. So, good to kind of put things in context where things are. Liver is such an important organ. It's way up here. And if you're taking or have taken anatomy physiology, it's kind of interesting to appreciate all this too. The pancreas, when you're doing those dissections, if you're doing that, is not simply as easy to find like this. It's usually kind of hidden somewhere, laying on the stomach. And so I put this in a few things here. These are all the approximately 40 essential nutrients, an important definition that definitely in a question like what do I we call things essential? The answer is we don't make make enough of them in the body or not at all, and we need them in our diet. That makes them essential nutrients to take into our body. And they're the kind of categories of each of these nutrients. Definition of digestion. So these are just from the PowerPoint, just some extra things here. So when you're feeling indigestion, you can think about where that's happening. You know, what part are we talking about? Is it going back up back up or down here or in the stomach? Why are we feeling not well? Okay, the order of things. So here's that important one. So the main hormones here. You know, there's others, there's other levels, but these are the ones that we really want to have a grasp on. What they do, where they released, what what do they do? Definition of a hormone is it means it comes from somewhere. It's triggered to be made, put out, and then does something important somewhere else, somewhere. And there's feedback when we don't need any more secretin. How do we know that? Then pH, when the pH is changed, it's a pH sensitive kind of mechanism. What does it do? It responds to need of acid stimulated from the pancreas, and the response is such to enhance the neutralizing of the acid that comes out of the stomach. The stomach gastrin is the thing that says we need HCl, hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is used for what in the stomach? Well, it helps with the digestion that happens in the stomach, and it's protein. Protein is being digested into smaller pieces, into peptides mainly, and maybe into some amino acids. But the acid it makes the environment such that the proteases work optimally, like peptidase and other proteases work in an acid environment. The acid also helps to unravel and denature the protein, also to make it able to be digested more effectively. Cholecystokinin, you think of fat, lipid, and lipid metabolism, lipid digestion, lipid transport, cholecystokinin, because that stimulates the bile that's needed for fat digestion from the gallbladder and pancreas. So this is a bit extra. That's there's feedback loops when we don't need any more gastrin produced. Then there's a feedback that when the acid reaches pH 1.5, then we don't want any more acid. It's not going to get more acidic. That's pretty low already. And so that's feedback loops. Okay. These are the directions that are given in for the test. There's 40 questions. Okay, something's wrong here. There's five short answers, 6 points each. There's 30 points come from the short answer. There's a math error here because this adds up to 41. There's 40 questions, and mainly multiple choice, so 2 points, and then the short essays or that you need, at least a few, up to 5 or so good sentences to answer completely, but you do get partial credit if you have, it seems like you're getting close to a complete answer. So when you're taking a test, you have 100 minutes, which should be sufficient. Most students have plenty of time, don't even use the majority of the time for these kinds of size tests I've seen in the past. So you take your time, but and you watch the time. Multiple choice questions you're sure of. You want to be able to get through some of them really fast, like in 30 seconds or a minute. They're not the type of multiple choice questions that are very long in the question and long in the answers. It's not that kind of multiple choice. You'll see some examples here. They're ones that if you know it, you can answer it fast. If you don't know it, then you need to take your best guess or best choice. You won't be able to backtrack, so you're looking at a question, you're answering it. Don't spend over amount of time and decide to move on. You've answered it and that kind of thing. Respondents lockdown browser must be used to complete the exam. Not only to complete, if you don't open lockdown browser, then you can't start the exam. And these are questions that you'll see at least a few of these, right? These are main kind of things as you're reading. Obviously, you're thinking about what you learned in chapter 5 about dietary lipids transported. What are we talking about there? We're talking about what I mentioned there, the chylomicrons. We're talking about LDL, HDL. What those two that I mentioned there, what's the difference between them to be thought. So think about that. Chylomicron, what's that? That's the large thing that's going from the out of the lymphatic system to the liver, digestion taking place, absorption to the liver putting out lipids, distributing lipids or cholesterol, and LDL, HDL, and the supposedly good lipoprotein, bringing back cholesterol back to the liver. That kind of briefly explaining. And you could look at three distinct functions of dietary for each. Three distinct functions of, there's a little bit of a mess up in that question. Three distinct dietary functions of carbohydrate and lipids. All right, so what do you learn about lipids? What are they used for? Well, they're cell membranes, the building blocks of important hormones, along with protein, carbohydrate. It's a big energy. Both of them are energy sources. So think of that sort of thing. All right, so multiple choice questions. These are could see some of these. This is the flavor of, that not too difficult, but not exactly. Some of the, as I know, multiple choice questions, sometimes it comes down to two, and one is better than the other. Chronic disease, and this refers to most nutrition deficiencies are not acute, they're chronic. So over time they progress. Especially the one that is not uncommon among older populations, and that's osteoporosis, where it starts with some smaller deficiencies of vitamin D and calcium over time, and then it's very hard or it's impossible to reverse the progression toward weaker bones and bone modeling, and all the way to osteoporosis. This is let's see, a child develops a dislike for noodle soup after she consumes when she was sick. This reaction is negative association. A similar kind of thing. So this was in chapter 2, associations in our eating pattern. So that's habits. Type of nutrient that's needed to be supplied in our foods. So that is the essential nutrient. While you review and practice, even looking at this, each of these you should have an idea what they are, what the phrase is, what the word is also. Nutrient is, which is a nutrient, which is a macronutrient rather. Macronutrient, meaning in large amounts that we take in our eating pattern. And the only one that's a macronutrient is, well, considered a macronutrient is protein. Water is taken in large amounts, but it's not exactly called a macronutrient, because we actually take in water even much more than what we call the macronutrients in terms of mass, right? Okay, so organic, which is organic? Should be able to pick out which one is organic. The only one that's organic is vitamin C. The others are inorganic. Again, this is a variation on the essential nutrient theme. is the one that cannot be made in sufficient quantity by the body. So there was a little bit of math that you in mind tapped to a couple things, and you should know how to do this. I don't remember if this version of the test had a little math problem in there, but what do you need to know? You need to know that the kcal, so the big calories per gram of each of the macronutrients. You need to remember that protein and carbohydrate have 4 kilocalories per gram, and fat is 9. And then you could do now there'll be a calculator. There may be one question that asks something like this. And it's logic of thinking this through. Weight reduction intake of 1400 kcals, right? This kcals again is the same as a large C. Sometimes we see that on food labels. It's a large C. Which 30 grams of fat, which includes 30 grams of fat, approximately what percent is that of the kcals? So we're looking at what does this 30 grams of fat mean in terms of kcals? Well, we have to know that 9, I think I have the math shown here. Yeah. Okay, so 9 kcals per gram, dimensional analysis. I love teaching this in school, high school. You can see the G's cancel out, and then we have 270 kcals. So what's that, a percent of that? Now, maybe you could, depending on your math skills, maybe you could do it by eye, but also you'll have a calculator that's part of the dashboard of the exam, and do that calculation, and that's what it comes out with. Okay, so there's variations on this kind of thing, but you definitely need to know and remember that there's 9 kcals per gram of fat and 4 kcals per gram of carbohydrate, and again, and 4 grams 4 kcals per gram of protein. The other one that usually doesn't come up in these kind of calculations is alcohol is in between 7 kcals per gram, which we shouldn't be learning about kcals for alcohol. This is a bit of a wordy one. Which statement describes the composition of most foods? But it's interesting, and maybe it's kind of common knowledge, but you read through these. Let's see, most contain only one of the 3. That's unusual. It could happen, but not most. So you can kind of say that's not going to be the answer. They contain equal amounts. Well, that's unlikely that we have exactly the same kcals of carbohydrate, fat, and protein. Really, that's not a good answer. They contain mixtures of the 3, although only 1 or 2 may predominate. Okay, that sounds like it could be. It could be. And you read the others, only 2. And those 2 contain equal amounts. Okay, so that's unlikely, right? Equal amounts. Only 2 of the 3, 1 present in far greater than the other. So we don't, I mean, it's between this one and this one probably, right? Okay. So this one, so when multiple choice questions make something that seems too definite, that it's unlikely, when they say all the time or most, then you got to be wary of it and select one that's less definite, say. Okay. How many vitamins? I think this was mentioned in by the second chapter. So vitamins, we're going to study those in more detail in later chapters, but there's fat soluble and there's water soluble. There's only 4 fat soluble and 9 water soluble. Okay, this is something about the scientific method. So these words you came across in most of your science courses. You have this, so you've probably seen this a few times, or even in high school, you should have come across this. The hypothesis. Right? You might say, well, this is the same prediction hypothesis, but if there's this is more the exact words. A lot of times, maybe you could say a prediction is the same, but in this case, the better word is the hypothesis. All right, this one is a little more reading than most of the others. Okay, so this is you're part of a research project, and you're handing out these distributing bottles of vitamin C, and you give the girls the ones with the vitamin C, and the boys the placebo, meaning not having the vitamin C in this study. And then the researcher instantly informs you that you made 2 errors. And the error most good studies is they're blinded, so that the people doing the study can have bias and don't know what the intervention, who's getting the intervention, right? So, and you should never, why would you, if the study isn't looking at the sex as being a variable, it's not supposed to be in this case, then you should have randomized who gets the treatment. So that's what that one is about. Again, on study related, increase in exercise accompanied with a decrease in body weight. Okay, so which is which? Then this is a negative or inverse correlation. What's the purpose of the RDAs and the and adequate intake? All right, so it's a matter of just kind of reading what seems to be the right, when one reading of that part of the chapter, it should be enough, but also looking at these level of detail and think about how you're studying. How do you expect to absorb things? Can you absorb things enough by just reading through? I would say not. That as you're reading, you really need to put most of your focus on that. And in addition to, I would suggest taking notes if you don't, or because probably most people haven't gotten the paper version. That's fine. It's not required. So taking notes might be a good practice, whether it's on paper or otherwise. So this one, another one that interrogates our knowledge of the acronyms here, which is true about nutrient intakes. Higher intakes is always safer than lower. Okay, so that's too definite a statement. Plus, we should know that it's not necessarily the case. In fact, there are upper limits for some nutrients. That is, we can get too much of what we think is a good thing. Right? We can overdose on certain things, like too much niacin. We're thinking that we want to have great nails or skin. Well, that could backfire. Could get rashes and things with too much niacin. Too much fat soluble vitamins definitely could accumulate and just backfire and do the opposite thing. Many of the fat-soluble vitamins are antioxidants, and if you have too much of them, that could backfire. They could become reactive, the opposite of what their what their main purpose is as an antioxidant. All right, reading through all this, intakes of above the upper level, um, can put a risk of toxicity. Well, that's clear. That's what the definition is of upper limit. Okay, this is the one that's a hard one to remember, at least I think so. The percentages of kcals for the macronutrients, right? So you got to recognize protein, fat, and carbohydrate mean macronutrient, and they're thought to reduce risk of chronic diseases. Okay, so the recommendation is to have these macronutrients in some kind, these suggested ranges. Right? I mentioned that this earlier, like carbohydrate between 45 and 65% of our kcals, protein this range, and fat in this range, and that's the this acceptable macronutrient distribution ranges. Okay. So by thinking through things, not not saying, "Oh my gosh, I don't remember the acronym," but slowing down and think and reading things, you'll make connections and figure out that that's the answer. Okay, so what is the one for fat? So it's that. Um, so just to tell you, I'm not gonna ask you a question like this. It's good to know these ranges, but this is getting a little maybe too picky. But we should have kind of a knowledge. This is protein, this is fat, and actually I think it's changed a little bit, but this one would be carbohydrate. So maybe you're wondering what is your what are the those are the ranges that are suggested ranges, and you're probably wondering what do you have? The sequence of stages, a typical development of a nutrient deficiency. So we said that this is a chronic, a slow-moving, um, slow-moving. If it becomes a disease, that is a nutrient deficiency. So what are the stages? So you'd think that it's inadequate intake would be the start. You're not going to have this right away. So already you can rule out a bunch of possible answers. Declining storage. Well, so that a lot of words there, but you can quickly, if you use your good skills at cutting through multiple choice questions, you could figure this one out pretty quickly, and then just kind of check that you're right. But the first phrase already gave that question away. So I'm not going to ask this, but I don't think it's even in this part of the text. But most appropriate person, and it might be controversial also, to get nutrition information from, and that's registered dietitian have to keep up. They're licensed. They are licensed specifically to know about nutrition. In fact, it's no longer an RD. It's a registered nutritionist dietitian. It's RND now, because the name didn't sounded like dietitian. Oh, that's someone that works in a hospital that makes the menus for particular people in the hospital, their needs and all. But they are probably the most up-to-date understanding nutrition. Medical doctors, most fall behind in their knowledge base and applying the knowledge compared to a good registered dietitian. Doctors are asked to learn more because they really should know more to integrate into practices. Okay, this is one of these questions about these 5 things that saw those building blocks earlier. Just a few more I think we have. Diet planning principle that all nutrients, fiber, and that maintain. What does that sound like? That's a sufficient amount. That gave that away. So just looking at the words, usually you can pick out what we're talking about. The nutrient dense refers to what? Higher in weight? No. USDA? No. Provide more nutrients relative to calories. Okay, so that's the one. So the others are not. You can see that they're not. And already we should have a bit of an idea about something like this. We'll learn much more in depth, but we know there are food groups. We saw that My Plate, we saw some of these things as you're going through the reading and Mind Tap. So the colors in fruit lots of times come from vitamin A being orange, and sometimes C in certain circumstances gives some color, but A as in to orangey and yellow. This so this we won't be on here, but it's good to know this food exchange list. This refers to choices for diabetic conditions. That is to balance the glucose entry into the bloodstream, which with diabetes, that's the issue, controlling homeostasis of glucose. Right, so all our carbohydrates eventually are metabolized liver and sometimes in muscle also to glucose. That's what we use for energy. That goes into the whole system of extracting the energy potential from glucose, from carbohydrates made into ATP eventually. And if we get too fast a spike of glucose into the bloodstream, that ends up potentially causing inflammation and other things terrible that could happen. And diabetes develops, at least the development of type 2 diabetes, later onset diabetes, is from too many of those spikes of glucose demanding insulin from the pancreas too much, too often. And the pancreas, in effect, gets tired out and it can't put out the insulin necessary. And too much bloodstream glucose is a problem because that's a lot of inflammation. In fact, if you're aware, A1C, we talk about this later on. The A1C measurement is an indirect measurement of too much glucose being in the bloodstream for too long a time. It's a measure of glucose interacting with protein on the cell, on the red blood cell. And that's an indicator, a marker of too much glucose in the bloodstream, causing inflammation that could lead to other kinds of problems like plaquing out of fats on blood vessels. So there's a difference between this enrichment and fortification. Those two, sometimes they're when we add calcium to orange juice. Now, orange juice doesn't usually have calcium It's not a source of calcium by its own, but lots of times now, calcium is being added to orange juice as a selling point, as a way to, well, fortifying it with a bit more vitamin. So I use the word fortifying because that's what it is. It's fortifying a substance of food that doesn't usually have that nutrient, fortifying it with. Enriching, if you look up and know the word enrich, means to bring up or heighten. So that would be, maybe we're adding extra vitamin C. We're enriching the orange juice with more vitamin C than it usually has. We enrich it with that. So calcium is the orange juice is fortifying. Okay, this is a label question, and uh, so there's I'm not going to have that kind of level asking too much detail about what is exactly on a label. This is a little more detailed, but calcium and iron, that's the ones that need to be on a label by law. Food labels express what? They're the daily values. If you look at a food label, you should have seen it in the textbook. Maybe you're starting to look at packaged foods that have food labels. You should, nutrient fact labels. Be curious, look at them. It's a percent of daily value. The daily value is what's recommended based on a 2,000 calorie, kcal intake as an average person. And if we see that 25% of the daily value recommended of iron or fiber, then that's how we value it. Fiber, just to mention, we mentioned it more, is one of those nutrients that a majority of people don't get the recommended amount of fiber. And it's something that I think I'll ask later on. Where do we get our fiber? How much do we think we get? All right, the process of breaking down into absorbable, that's digestion. Chyme. Okay, this might be a strange word that you learned in chapter 3. What is chyme? That is the semi-liquid mass, partially digested, released from the stomach into the small intestine, right? So the stomach starts to it does a good digestion of protein, but not much of other things. And the chyme is acidic as it comes out of the stomach and into the duodenum, the upper part of the small intestine. That is called chyme. Mucus in the stomach. So you wonder why the stomach doesn't get acid burns or harmed by the high amount of acid. That's because of the mucus in the stomach. Hydrochloric acid in the stomach, I mentioned that's for optimizing for the enzymes, optimizes the pH for the acidity of the stomach so that proteases work at their best. Bile. Mentioned this word earlier. It's emulsification. That's what it does for fat. Emulsifies the fat so that it exposes places that the enzyme or the lipases can get to hydrolyze the fat and into fatty acids. Thing about fatty acids, just mention the two chapters that you've reviewed, that you're reading, carbohydrate and lipids. They, in the beginning, they do talk a little bit about their chemical structure. So I don't expect that you need to write out, but you should know bit of, if you were to see two structures or describe the difference between what's a fat or a lipid and what's a carbohydrate, how would you think about how you describe those two? Okay, which requires the least digestion. Uh, simple carbohydrates, they begin to be digested, in fact, even in our mouth. Right? I know that we have in our saliva, we have uh, some carbohydrates. And then about the digestion, about the morphology of what's going on in the small intestine, some other vocabulary things there, villi and crypts. The function of the microvilli. Okay, so that's those finger-like projections where they have blood vessels that can absorb the water-soluble nutrients that have been digested in the duodenum. And then we have, and it's usually in yellow, that's the lymphatic vessel. To assist the process of digestion and absorption, it's usually best to what? So reading through these, some don't make sense, and you can rule them out. Eat several snacks. The right one, if you finally read all these, combine different foods to enhance absorption. Right. So many times that really happens. That things like iron is absorbed better when there's vitamin C around. So if you look at if you take supplements, you take vitamins, usually that happens to be a case where they put vitamin C with iron supplement. Yeah, liver is the most active organ. Very interesting. Thriving intestinal bacteria population. So this is most known now as the microbiome. And what's the role? Why is it important to us? There's a few things. One is it does some energy metabolism, but also produces these still being studied molecules that might enhance our immunity. Which substance is known to be produced by small intestinal bacteria. If you look at this, uh, you should be able to kind of rule out a few things like mucus and chyme. Unlikely that's going to produce glucose in any significant amount. Protein. It is vitamins. There's a couple of vitamins that vitamin K, interestingly, some of our microflora, the microbiome, produce some vitamin K and also some B12. Two systems that collaborate for digestion and absorption. And so the other two enzyme hormones. So these were the three that we mentioned earlier about the digestion, the main digestion and absorption, the GI tract hormones. The two others are that you should know about already, or you knew about before, insulin and glucagon. And they do, in effect, opposite um, things that they started. Their functions are either to decrease bloodstream glucose or increase it. So insulin is for decreasing, as I'm just pointing out the two up there that we haven't mentioned yet. But to answer the question, HCl is related to gastrin. Again, you should have in mind what each of these do, where they're produced, where they come from. Okay, released from the pancreas and released bicarbonate rich. Bicarbonate is the neutralizing agent. So we're talking about what neutralizes the chyme here. And that's the secretin. So this is a set of questions here relate, of course, to the GI hormones. And we see fat, and so that's with fat, it's CCK or cholecystokinin. So interesting how many names carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates have: blood sugar, dextrose, and so glucose also. The others, so in the fourth chapter, talk a little bit about the simple carbohydrates, and you should recognize simple monosaccharide, monosaccharide here, and then the disaccharides. That's a disaccharide. This is milk sugar. This is common fruit sugar, and this is maltose, or to do with malt, actual fermentation type sugar. Okay, this one, it's a good question. It should be, in which tissue is glycogen stored? Which tissues? Glycogen, that's our storage of glucose for in between meals, if you're running or swimming a distant event, you want to store as much glycogen as possible. That's the storage, and it's stored in the liver and muscle. What is the primary means of degradation of soluble fibers in this large intestine? So the other kind of carbohydrate are these is fiber. Fiber is a valuable component. It's sometimes referred to as a nutrient. Really important for a number of functions, including just better digestion, better movement of food through the GI tract, maybe absorbing some substances we don't want to absorb, but also getting down to the large intestine and enhancing bacteria microflora, because they metabolize, or they have enzymes, bacteria does, and use that as food, basically. Okay, again, the hormones, blood glucose falls, what pancreatic enzyme? So that's the opposite of insulin, glucagon, when we have low blood sugar. Okay, this is good to know. Most dietary lipids are triglycerides. Okay, and we'll end here. This is my plates. It's the updated version, some 15, 20 years ago from the food pyramid. This is a different graphic giving some proportions relating it to a plate. Okay, so that was review some example questions for about an hour. Thanks for staying staying with us. Any questions, comments? There was some pointing out where study materials are, some of the potential open-ended or short essay questions, and then some example multiple choice questions, some strategies of how to use your kind of knowledge and get through multiple choice questions that you know quickly and spend the time you need to formulate and answer the ones that require sentences. I'm not I'm not taking off for I don't I just need to read it. Don't worry about exact grammar, should say that right, or spelling. And I don't remember if it even has if answering has a spell check. I should check that. But just getting close to, if I can read it more, I want you to be as complete as you can in answering, but keep in mind 100 minutes, 40 questions, and 5 open-ended questions. All right, so think about that, do the math of whatever. You have the 35 questions of multiple choice and 5 open-ended, how you want to use your 100 minutes. And I've never heard the students, really, I don't remember in the many years I'm teaching it, if that they needed more time. Usually there was plenty of time, but you can use all your time.
Professor, are we allowed to use pencil and paper?
Oh, for what reason? For
The math portions?
the math portion. Okay. So yeah, so what you need to do is after so if I see you writing, then it's if I need to look. So by the way, so the respondus, this was explained. If it looks like that an instructor should review a student taking the test, then it's kind of highlighted that you may want to look at this portion of this video, because whatever the student went off camera or was too dark or was looking like they were looking for answers everywhere, then we look at it. But yeah, so at the end of the test, I think it even somewhere there's a prompt that if you used paper, just kind of show what you did. So the answer is yes. But just try to be clear and honest with it. And this is what I use. I understand that what we want to write down when we're doing math, but that would be very, very few. There might be one or two of like the one we showed there. So thanks for the question.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you everybody for staying and asking questions. If there's any other questions in the next whenever, before the exam or after, so remember it'll be open. In fact, probably no one wants to probably not take it tonight, but it'll open tonight. It'll be available, and like the instruction said, just try to have a a good connection, a quiet place that you can concentrate for the 100 minutes uninterrupted. And between Friday and, in fact, I think I even extended. I said it was only through, so I made it through Monday, right? So you can go from, if you do it, if you want to do it Friday, if you're ready, if you want to do it over the weekend, if you don't want to bother your weekend with it, or you want to study a little more, then okay, you can do it Monday. Remember that uh, time marches on, and the fourth week means chapter 6, protein. So don't let up. You know, it is a lot of material, as we said in the beginning, to get through, but get in some kind of pattern. So this takes care of the first 5 chapters of 18 that we'll get through. Some chapters are a little more dense than others. And I've tried to group them as best as possible. There's 5, usually 5. Yeah, it's always 4 or 5 chapters in each exam period. Right? Oh, last thing,
Professor.
after everybody completes and I grade everything, then I'll remind everybody. Then you can it'll be available that you can click into your test to see how, you know, your answers and what the correct answers are. So you can see how you did question by question. Yes, another comment, question?
I sent you an email a few days ago about student ID. I do not have right now. Can I show my driver license instead?
Yeah, it's perfectly fine.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry I missed that your note. Okay, if not, then thanks for being part of this, and have a good evening. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.